The Royals begin their postseason quest tomorrow, starting in Baltimore against the Orioles. Let's dive into that next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuning to Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. You also can catch us on wherever you get your podcast. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast. We're on Odyssey, and we're on YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. If you're a first-time listener and you want to know a little bit more about me and this show, I am based here in Kansas City. I work at Sports Radio 810 WHB, doing some hosting, some co-hosting, and a little bit of producing as well. But when it comes to this podcast, when you click on this link, you know that you're going to be getting 30 straight minutes of Royals baseball. Now, as for today's show, it is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. Well, tomorrow's the big one, and hopefully the first of many victories in the postseason for the Kansas City Royals. It'll begin at 3:08 at Camden Yards. Cole Reagans versus Corbin Burns. Game 2, still TBD for Baltimore, but the Royals will be going with Seth Lugo. And if there is a Game 3, Michael Wacha is going to get the ball for the Royals in an elimination game. Still unsure of what that could be for Baltimore. All we know from Baltimore's side is that Corbin Burns is going to be going Game 1. I think what's a little bit annoying for me is that the Royals clinched after we had already had an early Mailbag Friday episode, so we couldn't really do any episodes over the weekend, or at least I wasn't available to. So this is the first opportunity I've had to talk about the last couple of days, and a quick turnaround here because the Royals play tomorrow and in less than 24 hours. And so we'll already be on to the next thing and talking about Game 1, Game 2, and if there is a Game 3, we'll have plenty on that as well. But I think what's so enjoyable about what tomorrow means is that through all the ups and downs of the season, the injuries that happen, the doubt, the positivity, the wild games, the blown games, the blowouts, the Royals now turn the page on a completely different season. Everything that happened in the regular season, with the exception of where you are as a seed, doesn't matter now. What the Royals did in Atlanta doesn't matter. What the Orioles did against Minnesota doesn't matter. What these teams did against each other back in April does not matter because it is a completely different playing field, and it's going to be a blast. That place tomorrow, Camden Yards, Oriole Park at Camden Yards, it is going to be a madhouse. That place is going to be unhinged, loud, crazy. It's supposed to be, for the most part, warmer weather for October. I think it's supposed to have a chance of rain in the morning, but you're looking at high 60s by first pitch. For a lot of these guys that'll be taking the diamond in the top of the first inning, or more so the bottom of the first inning for the guys in the field, it'll be their most hostile environment they've ever played in. I think you could say that this is the most hostile environment that Bobby Witt Jr. has ever played in front of. This would be the most hostile environment that Michael Massey's ever played in front of. This would be the most hostile environment Vinnie Pasquantino would be playing in front of if he does, in fact, get activated tomorrow for the game. I mean, what an absurd turnaround, and we'll talk about him and his injury coming up in about 10 minutes or so. But to me, I think there is such an enjoyment of watching tomorrow, not just because the Royals are in the postseason, they've extended their 2024, but because they're playing with really nothing to lose, in my opinion. I understand, and I want to be very clear in this point. I understand there's going to be some nerves tomorrow. There's going to be some anxiety. How can you not when you're watching playoff baseball and you're on the road and it's a sold-out crowd and you are living and dying with every single pitch? But I think at times throughout tomorrow, whether it's a good game or it's a blowout, I think you can appreciate what this team was able to accomplish, what they were able to overcome, and the quick turnaround they had, a 30-win improvement from a year ago. And they get their chance to make a run at Baltimore And then also go and play the Yankees in the ALDS. They're not going to be favored in any of these games of the postseason. They're just not going to be the favored team on this side of the bracket. If they got to the World Series, they wouldn't be favored in the World Series, in my opinion. They are the true underdog in this side. But there's a glorious thing about being an underdog, and it's also the enjoyable aspect when watching it being an underdog. Because in 2014, the Royals were an underdog. They were an underdog despite playing at home against Oakland because everybody knew how Oakland was. They knew how good they are, how good John Lester was, and that was back for a one-game wild card. This is a best of 3, so you're guaranteed at least 2 games. They're the underdogs against Baltimore. They are going to be the underdogs against the Yankees if they advance. They would be the underdogs, in my opinion, against Detroit, against Houston, and against Cleveland if they got to the ALCS. But that is going way too far ahead. Tomorrow, I think, can be this unbelievable moment if you're a diehard Royals fan to wake up in the morning, put on your jersey, put on your polo, put on your sweatshirt. Maybe you're getting off work early. Maybe you're leaving school early. You're trying to find a way to watch this game. You take a moment just to appreciate what this is, what this means. Because I didn't say it on one of our podcasts, or at least I can't remember saying it, is that this team would not have been appreciated as much as we would have liked them to be if they would have bottomed out and missed the postseason. Because as exciting as it was, when you're there, when you have a cushiony lead with few games to go, you got to make sure you lock things down. And the Royals did enough to get into the postseason, and they've given themselves a chance now. You throw everything out the door. You throw out the regular season stats, the series wins, the sweeps, anything that happened, they don't matter now. It's all focused on game 1, game 2, and maybe game 3 in Baltimore. And if you get past them, that only adds to your playing with house money mantra going into this postseason. But tomorrow, I urge a lot of people just to appreciate what this season has become and that they can build on this regardless of how it ends up. I mean, to me, I look at it that way. They got into the postseason. My expectations going into the year were that they were going to come close but not make the postseason. And they held down a playoff spot for the better part of 2 months. They were not scratching and clawing until the final week of the season to hold on for dear life for the postseason spot. And what also makes you feel a little bit more satisfied is that the Royals finished in second in the American League Central this year because the White Sox beat the Tigers in the finale and the Royals beat the Braves. They finished with the same record. Royals had the tiebreaker, so it's a second-place finish in the American League Central. And I think they got the better matchup going up against Baltimore than Houston. I didn't like how the Royals lineup stacked up against what Houston had to offer with their rotation, plus their playoff pedigree. You got to go up against Framber Valdez, who no-hit the Royals through 7 innings. And their last meeting, I don't want to see Hunter Brown with the way that he looked against the Royals in Houston. I don't want to see Yusei Kikuchi, who dominated the Royals in 2 starts in the regular season. I know that goes against what I just said, is you throw everything out. But in terms of just matchups, going further than just this regular season, I'm talking multiple years, I don't like the way the Royals match up against Houston. And the Tigers maybe feel like they match up better with Houston, or maybe they wanted Baltimore. I like this draw that the Royals got. And going into tomorrow, I don't see them as a long shot. I don't see the Royals as this. I see them as an underdog. I don't see them as an impossible underdog. Like the Marlins last year, to me, going into Philadelphia, that was an impossible underdog story. They were just not going to beat Philadelphia. I think you can see a world in which the Royals, if they win tomorrow, they win this series. Whether that be in game 2 or game 3. They've got favorable pitching matchups in a few of these. I mean, I assume the Orioles are going to go with Zach Eflin in game 2, regardless of what happens. But I also think the Orioles are leaving that door open because if they hammer Cole Reagans and the Royals tomorrow, they might say, okay, we'll save Zach Eflin for game 3. We feel good with where our offense is at. Therefore, we're going to throw Albert Suarez or Cade Povich in game 2. That to me is why Baltimore's being a little bit more tight-lipped about it. But I like this draw. And I would say tomorrow you appreciate what this team did. You should get excited about this postseason. You should be excited about your plans and enjoy it. Be nervous, be anxious, have those nerves. That's human. I'm going to be a wreck during the game, for sure, because it's the first time in 9 years the Royals have had a chance to play into October, to play in front of crowds like they'll see tomorrow. And you hope it's just the beginning of what this window could be. But it's also important that if this isn't the beginning of a 5, 6, 7 year window of competitive baseball, it's important that they capitalize on giving themselves a chance to get in. And now it's just about playing with house money. And we'll talk about that phrase and what I truly mean by it in the final segment. But I like the spot they're in. I can't wait to see this team play. And it's going to be a barn burner tomorrow between Cole Reagans and Corbin Burns, the third matchup with these two in 2024. They face each other twice back in April, and they're going to toe the slab against each other in Game 1 of the Wild Card Series beginning tomorrow afternoon at 3:08 p.m. Central Time, and you can watch that on ESPN2. Maybe you're having fun watching it from your house. Maybe you're out of the bar. Wherever you may be, I hope you enjoy the game and truly appreciate what this season has been, because I've had a blast doing this podcast and going through all the ups and the downs. And now we're finally here in the postseason, back in the postseason, and going to have a lot to talk about over the next 2 weeks or so. Hopefully longer than that. Even if the Royals end their season on Wednesday, we'll still have plenty to talk about over the next 2 weeks. But hopefully we're talking about a team that's still in the bracket 2 weeks from now, maybe 3 weeks from now. All right, we'll take our first break of the show. When we come back, let's talk about Vinnie Pasquantino. Is he actually going to play? We'll dive into that next on Locked On Royals. You are tuning to Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Want to give a shout out to our title sponsor today in FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. And for tomorrow, if you're looking to put some money down on a couple of guys out there, one that I'll throw in as a sleeper if he plays, which is why it's a dangerous play, is Paul DeJong. He's got great numbers against Corbin Burns. Maybe look at the odds of Paul DeJong getting over 0.5 hits in the game, just having some success against Corbin Burns. I would at least look into that. And if you like the matchup that the Royals offense has against Corbin Burns, he didn't strike him out a lot in the 2 starts that he had against him. So maybe if you're looking at strikeout total for some of the hitters in the game, I would take the under on that as well. So let's talk about this lineup, this offense, and what it may look like tomorrow for Kansas City. I know a lot of people have asked me about the lineup and how I think it's going to look, but I do think we're not going to see a drastic change. But I know everybody wants to know if Vinnie Pasquantino is going to be activated or not. If I were to give my honest opinion, and I don't have any inside source that I'm going off of here, this is just a gut feeling. I think in some capacity, Vinnie Pasquantino will be available. And I get that from what Matt Quatrero said on MLB Network Radio. I get that from what Vinnie Pasquantino said to Joe Goldberg after they had clinched on Friday. I just get this sense that he is going to be at least available. Now, let me clarify with this. I'm not sold yet that he's going to be activated and he'll be in the lineup tomorrow. I'm just not 100% there yet. The Royals didn't get the chance to have live BP on the field today because of weather, so they were inside in the cages, and Vinnie Pasquantino was hitting. They wanted to see how he'd feel, and they'll make their decision tomorrow morning on the postseason roster. But to me, I think signs are pointing to him being added to the roster. But to what capacity, that's going to be the bigger question. Because it's not going to surprise me if he's activated and he is a late game pinch hitting bat. Now, there's also pushback to that and say, well, why even activate him then if he's going to get one at bat a game? Well, it is the postseason. And would you rather pinch hit with Vinnie Pasquantino late in the game, or would you rather have Adam Frazier? Or would you rather go with, Paul DeJong in a big spot late in the game? That's my first thought, is they'll probably add him to the roster because there's been too much smoke, right? You've heard us say that all the way back into the beginning parts of the offseason when the Royals were interested in guys, Where there's smoke, there's fire. And Mac Quatrero, more than anybody else, I think, alerted it. I think the sirens went off a little bit that, oh, he actually may have a chance to play in this wild card series. When he said that there's a good chance that it can happen, to me, that thought, okay, if your manager is saying there's a good chance, I think that you can probably hit the button that he is going to be added to the roster. But the question becomes, how often is he going to play? In my opinion, I still think Yuli Gurriel is the first baseman tomorrow, regardless if Vinnie Pasquantino is added or not. If he's in the lineup tomorrow, he will be a DH. And I would imagine that his role in the entire series, and hopefully beyond that, will be a DH in the lineup. Because you don't want to do too much with still trying to recover. I mean, this is an absurd turnaround if it happens. When Vinnie Pasquantino went down, and then it came out the next day, it was a 6 to 8 week timeline, I believe it was. And I think that matched up with the ALCS or the very end of the ALCS. I thought, no, then his season is done. I'm just not there yet. Now I've got reason to believe things have sped up and he's progressed really well. And the positive, as weird as this is to say, the positive of having a break is that once that thing heals and doctors are telling you you're good to go, it's kind of rare, in my opinion, that you'd have a major setback. There might be discomfort, and that's what it would come back to. If he's out there in the cage and he's feeling pain in his hand when he's swinging, then I would say he's not going to get activated. But he's now been taking live BP. He had a live simulated game and a matchup against Will Smith the other day. So he's been facing guys and getting major league pitchers on the mound and hitting off of them, no setbacks yet. So with his cage swings today, if there's no setback, which I'm sure we'll find out either later on this evening or in the early morning hours, Vinnie Pasquantino is going to be on the playoff roster. But that also could mean he is a bench bat. He is a pinch hitter. He is going to come in late in the game, and maybe he would stay there. You know, instead of just 3 straight games or 2 games and he's in the lineup for 4 at-bats, maybe it's, hey, in the 6th or the 7th inning, we're going to him, and he'll get another at-bat because he's the DH here. Now, he'd have to be pinch hitting for Yuli Gurriel because then you'd have to move it around a little bit. If you pinch hit with somebody and moved him into the DH spot, then I believe that other spot becomes the pitcher's spot. So you'd have to pinch hit somebody else, and that to me gets a little bit too complicated. So to me, it would probably be a 1 inning or a 1 at-bat sort of role, but I'm also not 100% convinced that's what it is either. That's just the first bullet point I have of if he is added, this could be his role. Because the timeline just doesn't match up with when this injury happened. And guys can always have miraculous recoveries and they can show up a lot earlier than expected. But this feels a hell of a lot earlier than what was originally planned. Otherwise, I feel like they would have said, hey, it actually only may be a 4-week absence and he's ready to go. So to me, I just want to wait and see if he's activated. And then what they say right after that of, hey, he's in the lineup today. If he's in the lineup today, he's the DH and I'm fine with that. That feels like he is close enough to 100% to make things happen. Yuli Gurriel will still be at first base, but Vinnie Pasquantino could be in the 3-hole and DHing. I'm fascinated to see how that all plays out because there is no doubt that Vinnie Pasquantino gives this team a better chance to compete against Baltimore, against Corbin Burns, against Zach Eflin, and against either Albert Suarez or Cade Povich. To me, that's what I think it could come down to tomorrow morning is, well, I think he's getting activated. I'll go out ahead and say that. I think he's added to the roster. I just don't know yet what that role will be. And there will be people in the comments, I have no doubt about it, that will say, well, then just don't activate him. If he's not going to play, he's going to be a pinch hitter, then don't waste a spot with a guy that would only give you 1 at-bat, and he hasn't had a live game at-bat. He's had a simulated game, and he's had BP, but somebody that hasn't had any in 4 weeks, in basically a month, right? You don't want to risk that, and maybe there's other guys that could be better options because they could go into the game and play multiple positions, whereas Vinny likely wouldn't go out there to the field. He would purely be a hitter. So to me, that's what it's going to come down to tomorrow. We have to know more on how today went. And if today went smoothly and there were no setbacks, I got no reason to believe that he wouldn't be added to the playoff roster, because just because you are doesn't mean that you have to go out there and you're in the lineup every single day. Maybe he plays in game 1 and then he doesn't play in game 2. There's a couple of different ways you can break this down and truly evaluate how Vinnie Pasquantino can be involved in the wild card series. But Ryan Lefebvre said it on the broadcast that, there's a good chance. There's a chance it happens. Matt Quatrero said it. Vinny seemed really optimistic when they clinched. I think signs are pointing to him at least being on the roster and having a chance to play. Best case scenario, we get word that he's activated tomorrow and he's hitting third in the DH spot against Corbin Burns tomorrow against the Baltimore Orioles. Okay, we're going to take our final break of the show. When we come back, let's talk about playing with house money. I'm not saying the Royals have virtually no pressure, but they should come out tomorrow feeling loose and free and playing a team that definitely has all the pressure on them. We'll dive into that next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Want to give a shout out to Gametime, and if you're still thinking about going to the playoff game, either game 1 or game 2 in Baltimore, I would strongly suggest going over to Gametime and buying your tickets. They're going to show you the best possible deals. Even though I wasn't going and I will not be in Baltimore tomorrow for the game, I just kind of selfishly looked on Gametime to see what tickets are going for, and they're a lot more affordable than I thought they would be. I actually know some family friends that are going to be in attendance for that game. Should be an awesome, fun, chaotic atmosphere, and hopefully the Royals can find a way to win. But if you are thinking about that, get your plane tickets covered first, but then go to Gametime and buy your tickets and maybe get some good seats to watch game 1 of the wild card series. So download the Gametime app today, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off on your first purchase. Those terms apply. So again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It is game time. Well, as I said in the first segment today, I am going into tomorrow excited, nervous, anxious, all those type of things, because as we know, it's been 9 years, right? This is a long time coming for Royals fans to enjoy the postseason. And I'm not ready for the year to be done yet. I'm not ready for this podcast to be talking about other teams in the playoffs and then free agents. I'm not there yet. And I know I won't be there at any point unless the Royals win Game 7. The final day of Major League Baseball will be the time I can officially turn the page and look to 2025. But what is so amazing about playoffs in baseball is that there's a story to tell with every single team. There's a story of how they got there, what their fan base has gone through, what crushing losses they had. Every team has their story or their revenge tour, if you will. And the Baltimore Orioles are on their revenge tour. They won 100 games last year. They were the number 1 seed. They were this poster child for how you rebuild a baseball team. Mike Elias, their GM, executive of the year. Brandon Hyde, manager of the year. All these, a talented team. They got Gunnar Henderson, who's going to win an MVP at some point. Adley Rutschman's the best young catcher in baseball. They have these resurgence stories of Ryan O'Hearn, right? They've got longtime favorites like Cedric Mullins. And at one point in time back then, Trey Mancini, Austin Hayes, Jorge Mateo. They'd had guys that had stuck around for the bad years. Then they have this 100-win season, and they get swept in the ALDS by the Rangers. They didn't win one playoff game. And I know for a lot of Baltimore fans, because I know a few, it was this feeling of that doesn't make the 2023 year worthless, because we still got to enjoy 6 months of great baseball, 100-win baseball, and we got to dream. And that's what I take away with playoffs. If you are lucky enough to get there, but you don't win a playoff game, it does not make your season worthless, because you got to enjoy 6 months. I've never believed in that idea of, well, if you won 86 games and got bounced in the first 2 games, you're the same as the 60-win team or the White Sox who won 40. Well, no, because they didn't get to enjoy any good baseball. The playoffs is a blessing to be a part of. You're watching the Braves and Mets today, and you got goosebumps. You're excited. You're fired up for tomorrow. You can't wait. You were counting down the hours. You were counting down the minutes. You were counting down the seconds. But what tomorrow is going to be is a tale of two teams and two different types of pressure. I think a road team always has pressure. And I think for the Royals, not being in the postseason for 9 years, they do have a little bit of pressure to make tomorrow worth it. Like going out there and giving up 7 runs in the first inning and losing 14-1 would absolutely be a letdown. Nobody can deny that. But Baltimore's is completely different because everybody's looking at them and saying, no, you do have to sweep this team. You're at home. You're playing a Royals team that maybe to some people out there don't think is deserving enough or they're not good enough. Well, fine. If you believe that way, then you should have no problem. Right? You went out and got Corbin Burnes to pitch in games like this. Gunnar Henderson didn't have a better season than Bobby Witt Jr. It's his chance to show out. Adley Rutschman didn't have a better season than Salvador Perez, at least in some categories. But to me, the Royals and their fan base can go into tomorrow playing with house money. Nobody believed you'd get here. Some had hope in you. Some lost hope along the way. But you're going into tomorrow with nowhere near the same type of pressure that Baltimore has. Because if Baltimore doesn't win this series, the shine on that organization wears off a little bit. Because last year, that shine was still there. Man, they went through some awful years, but look at the talent they brought in and look at their rotation. Look at their bullpen. Didn't win a playoff game. But you're not going to wipe it and erase everything that happened in 2023 because of 3 losses in the postseason. But if the Royals find a way to win this series in Baltimore, that's when you start to go, all right, well, now the pressure's not so much completely on you, but fans get impatient. They're going, we just went through a 100-win season and a 90-plus win season, and all we got out of it was 1 playoff win and a series we didn't even win. That's the pressure the Orioles have on them tomorrow. And it's a pressure maybe they want on them. They want to prove people wrong because I know there are some that wrote them off because of their second half. Sub 500, the bullpen struggled, the injuries piled up. Gunnar Henderson took a step back. Adley Rutschman took a step back. All those things get factored in, but then you have to basically toss them in the trash by 3 o'clock tomorrow because it's a completely different game, different stakes, different pressure. But the Royals, I think for the first time, I think all year, I'll be quite honest with everybody here. I think the first time all year, they've got immense, they don't have the Orioles have immense pressure. The Royals don't have any type of pressure in this game other than the fans want the game to be competitive. It's not that you're going to be content with losing. I'm not getting at any of that type of stuff. I'm saying that for the last week and a half, the Royals were pressured with the fact of they're letting a playoff spot slip away. There was pressure when they had to go into that game against the Red Sox and the game against the Nationals with their playoff spot on the line. That's pressure, right? That's absolutely pressure. But even going back to opening day, there was expectation set for this team. You spent money, you've got to be better. And then all season long, it was about comparing and contrasting how this team got better, this and that and this and that. Tomorrow, they made it further than even people in their own fan base thought they could get. You are playing free and easy or playing with house money. When you're playing with house money, that makes you dangerous. And yes, this is going to be a absolute glorious atmosphere tomorrow. It is going to be hectic, chaotic, hostile, all of that. But the Royals can go in knowing that people don't think they're going to win it. People don't think they're getting in the next round against the New York Yankees. And if they do, they sure as hell aren't going to pick them to beat the Yankees in the ALDS. So you've got that with you. It's like in the way the Tigers were able to play for the last month. Nobody thought they could actually pull it off, and that led to more confidence. And tomorrow, if the Royals find a way to win that game, that could be the first door opening to another great playoff run, to having you on the edge of your seat every single pitch. That's what's fun about tomorrow. I'll be nervous. I'll be anxious. But to me, when you play with house money, when you're in the Royals position of nobody thought we'd be here, we made it further than people expected, that's when you can play free and easy. And hopefully the guys in the clubhouse are telling themselves that. Not to not take this game seriously, but to have fun and also appreciate what you did to get here. Now, I know there'll be people in the comments. There'll be people telling me, hey, if they get smoked in these 2 games, worthless season, fire Mac Quatrero, get rid of this guy, Again, I'm just not going to approach it like that. If they don't win a game in Baltimore, I'm still going to say that 2024 was a monumental success. But they find a way to win one of these games, and whether it be game 1 or they force a game 3 elimination game, that's when you can go another step and say, not only was it a monumental season to change the culture of this organization, we kind of feel like, hey, the window's just opening. This can be us again next year. We're going to spend more money, find more talent to make this team go a step further. But if you find a way to win tomorrow, which Royals fans should have confidence, playing with house money is fun, but you should still have confidence with Cole Reagan's on the bump and Bobby Wood Jr. and Salvador Perez in the lineup and maybe Vinnie Pasquantino, they can maybe get it done. You can have the confidence they can win game 1 and put the Baltimore Orioles on the ropes just 1 game into that series. Well, that's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Thank you for making Locked On Royals your first listen today. For your second, find Locked On MLB. Prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully, who has it all covered every single day. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Tomorrow, we'll either have a morning episode previewing the lineups in the Game 1 showdown at Camden Yards, but if not, we will have a recap after the game a little bit later on in the evening. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.